Well, this is the second video for the workshop, and I'm just going to cover what we just saw in the second session. Hopefully next week we're going to cover some other new subjects and make the game bigger and cooler. So this is basically what we had up to this point. Kind of like the main difference with the previous project or the previous part is that we added layers, the concept of layers, and then we kind of added, well, a background and some elements that are supposedly coins that we should be able to grab somehow. So I'm going to start working that on the project that I already created for the previous video. So this is where we were in the previous video, almost like right there, because I just started recording right after. So the first thing that we're going to cover here is about the layers. So right now we have been working just with this pane, with this project bar here, with this tab, the projects, but we haven't touched the layers. So that's what we're going to do right now. By default, you have one layer, that is layer 0, and that's where we're putting everything. But if we want to do something like a background or the UI, we're going to add some score, and we're going to be able to move things one on top of the other, then we have to start adding layers. So since we kind of already discussed the things that we can use here, I'm going to go right away and start adding them. And I'm going to add 2 layers. So the first one is going to be for the background. And the first thing that I'm going to mention is that every single layer that we create is going to be here at the top. So that means, and this is important, that the order that these layers are here really affects how things appear on the game. So everything that is here on top is going to appear on top on the game. So since we already added all these elements on the layer 0, it's much easier to kind of like move this one down. So I just added layer 1, and then I pick it and drag it down. Okay, and to make it simpler for all of us, I'm also going to rename it. You can just kind of like click on it like I did here, or just click on that and go here to the properties and rename it how we rename the other objects. In this case, I'm going to say background. Okay. So there are many options that we can use with the background. The simpler one would be just to kind of like give a color. So in this case, I'm going to give it a, I don't know, blue. Well, my character is blue, so that's not a good one. So let's say yellow. But still, I don't see anything. So what happens? I would expect something here in the background to appear yellow, and even if I change it, it's not changing. And it's because we still have a layer on top, that is our layer here, that I'm going to change it to be named game. Okay? And this layer is not transparent. So we can select it, click on the layer, and go here to the properties and select transparent, yes. And now we should be able to see it. Why is it not appearing? And of course, I cannot forget about that. All the layers that we're adding on top, they are transparent by themselves. So I can just change it here to no. Then we have the yellow that we were looking for. Perhaps it's a little ugly, so I'm going to change it to a little lighter, something like that. This one is more visible. And then let's run it. And then we have our background. Now, of course, this background, I guess it can work, but it would be better if we have an image. So what I could do is to try to create something really cool and to put it out there. So since we're doing this for educational purposes, I'm going to find an image online, and then I'm going to put it out there. So give me a second, and I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to look for something here to try to find a cool background. Well, this one, it's an animation. I could use it, but still, let's go for this one. After that, I can just say images, I'm going to look for extra large ones. Then I can look around a little bit to see what is good. So I'm going to go for this one. I'll check view image, and I have this. So just remember, I'm using this image that is out there on the internet just to use it in the project as a placeholder. I'm not going to publish anything like this because this is not my image. I shouldn't use it because I didn't take it and I don't have any rights on it, okay? So right now it's just I want to make it look cool for the video, and I want to show you how to do it, and then you can create your own images. This one is actually gigantic, so well, that's good. So I'm going to save it. So basically right click, save picture as, and San Gabriel Mountains, that's perfect too. Okay, so I have it there. Now I can go to my project, and what I'm going to do is double click, and I'm going to use tile background. I can use a sprite, but the advantage of the tile background is that it's made to be for background. It's optimized for that. And then if it turns out that you need a much bigger background than what you expected, you still can keep stretching it and it's going to work. So I'm going to put it out here. Then instead of like drawing something here, what I'm going to do is just to load an image. I have it on pictures, if I'm not mistaken, in San Gabriel Mountains. It says that it's gigantic. I say yes. And now my background, well, this one is in the background, yes. And what happens here? Okay, it's just that it was really big. So most of it kind of like looks blue, sky blue. And I have just to stretch it to be able to feel some of that. And you see at this point, this cut here is because, well, if you that's the end of the picture. So well, in this case, we just need this part, so that works. And I'm just going to leave it at that. So let's see. You can move it around. Now, how it looks. Okay, that's a little unfortunate for my little character because it's blue, so there's not much contrast with the rest. So I can move it around, or I just can change the character, my hero, and since I just have a few colors, then I'm just going to make him, I don't know, like this color, whatever it is, and I'm going to change that in all of them, and that should make it more visible. Hopefully. Okay, that works. Still even if it's almost the same color as the enemies, it's obviously a different thing. So that works quite okay. Now, what happens, what is the other layer that I'm going to add? So please remember, don't use the image like this if you're going to publish something. I'm just going to use it to show you an example, okay? I'll create a cool background for my finished game when everything is done. So I'm going to leave it at that. Even I'm going to make it not visible so I can work here, and that you can make things visible or invisible here. It's not that they are disappearing from the game, it's just that it's harder with all the detail that I have here, so I just can hide it for a second. Now, the other layer that I created in our session was for the UI. So I'm going to create it. This time it's going to work perfect because it's going to be on top. I'm going to call it UI. So UI goes for user interface, okay? And that's where most of the time you're going to put information like the score, like the lives, things that you want the player to be aware of all the time. So to do that, I'm going to add a text, and I'm going to use it for the score. So I'm going to double click, and I have here text. I'm going to insert it, and I'm going to put it here. I already know that the background is quite bright, so I'm just going to put it on red, and I'm going to say score 0. Okay, so I'm going to change the name of this one, score text. So that's kind of cool. I know that this is the text that I'm going to be using for that. Now, this one quite likely is, well, I'm going to show you the error. If I begin to move around, my score is stuck in that area. So if I go away, I stop seeing the score. That's not good. And then the entire point of having the UI, how we're setting it, it's not, well, it's kind of useless. So the problem is something that has to do with the parallax. All the blocks, all the layers that we have right now, they're moving at the same time. So when my character moves around, all the layers are left behind, and then the score at some point gets, well, it's out of the screen. But we can fix that. So I'm just going to go to the layers, and I'm going to select the UI, and I'm going to change the parallax that we have here. It's 100, 100. I'm going to say 0, 0. Basically, keep it static. Don't move it. Don't do anything with that. So now if I run it again, even if I move out of the screen, my score is following me all the time. It's always there. It's always there at the top of the screen. And that's really cool, because usually the player would like to know about the score. Or let's say that we are talking about here about the lives. I would really love to see how many lives I have. Okay, so that works. Now, we get into a problem that is like, what happens when I increase my score? Is this going to change? And it turns out that it's not. So I'm going to do something really quick, and it's like I'm going to add some coins. Okay, so I'm just going to double click sprite. I'm going to make them kind of like yellowish, super bright. This is, well, this is yellowish. It supposedly is more yellow than anything. Okay, something like this. And supposedly this is a coin. Of course, at some point I'm going to actually give it a nice shape, and I'm going to make a few copies, and I have coins all over. So the entire purpose of this is that when I touch the coin, I should increase my score. So we're going to do something similar to what we did with the enemy in the part at least of the collision. But what I'm going to detect is the collision between my player, my hero, and the coin. And at that point, I'm going to increase my score. So I'm going to do part of it. I'm going to add an event in the event sheet that we had here. I'm going to say collision between the hero, collision with another object. Click object to choose this one. I'm going to rename here to coin. So I'm going to detect when my hero has collision with the coin. Now, what happens? Right now we have this little label, this little text that tells me the score. But we don't really have anywhere where we are really storing the score. The score is a number. The score is something that is going to change. It's going to start from 0, but it can go all the way to infinite. We can keep adding to the score, and even subtracting from the score, and then we have to keep track of that. So in Construct 2 and most programming languages, what you do is you create a variable. So I'm going to right click here and say add global variable. I'm going to call it score. That it starts at 0. So say OK, and I have it now here. Add global variable. So right click, add global variable. So this score is almost like a bucket or like a box. In that box, I put a value, a numeric value, that in this case is 0. And then whenever I change it, I just change the value that is there. But whenever I need to check, I just can go to that bucket, I can go to that box and figure it out what is the current value. So the first thing that we're going to do here is like, hey, we're already asking about the collision. Then at this point, I can increase this number. So it's not going to be 0, it's going to be, I don't know, 100. So what I'm going to say is add action, system, and in the section for global variables, that if you remember, this is a global variable, global number, I'm going to say add 2. I'm going to increase. Right now we have only one variable, so it's going to show me that. And I'm going to say I'm going to add 100. Okay? So I'm going to run it right there. It's still not finished. And you're going to see that it's not going to work. Oh well, and you're going to see another error, that my coins are moving at the same time that my player, so I cannot touch them. So what I do is just I go here to the coin, and that means that they are in the UI layer. So I'm just going to move them to the game. Now I should be able to touch them. You see? Now they're not moving. So, but what happens? My score is still 0. The thing is that we have a disconnection. Internally, the program is increasing this. It's adding 100, 200, 300, 400. It's moving, it's changing the value that we have in the score. But this text that we have here is not changing. So I have to say, hey, this text here, I'm going to update the value. I'm going to put whatever I have here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to say add action. This is the first time that we're going to add 2 actions to one event. So add action. I'm going to pick the score text. And almost at the bottom, I'm going to take this one. Set text. Next. So I'm going to write down this one here, and then I'm going to show it much bigger so you can see the detail and you don't miss it. To say score. Score. I'm going to copy that. I'll show it to you much bigger. This is from our previous video. So I'm going to say something like this. That's good enough. So when you started, I'm going to cancel it for a second. When you started and added this set text, the only thing that you had there is like quotation marks, open and close quotation marks. So we need to add something like this if you want. If you don't want, that's good too, but usually you should. And everything that is in between the quotes is going to appear just like that. So it is going to say score. So this part here, this ampersand score, that is the value that we have in our bucket, in our variable. In this case, the variable is called a score. So at some point, it's going to replace, and it's going to say, I'm going to show in that label a score and then a number. And that number comes from our variable that was located here. So if the number was 100, it's going to show 100. If it's 200, 200, 3, 4, whatever it is. I'm going to say done, and I'm going to test it. So right now, it starts at 0. Then I go here, 100, 200, 300, 400. Let's see if I can get that one. 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., etc. So it's working. So this is a little bit unusual because you have to actually type, but second, because you have to use that part of the ampersand and the value that you have there. Still, this is really good because that kind of like gives you the basics on how to use variables. You just have to create them and give a name, and then when you want to show, well, in this case we were changing, and in the other case we were showing it. Okay, so that's a cool thing. Now the only problem that I have right now is that when I'm playing, I can keep cheating. So I can touch the coin one time and then another time, and then the same coin is giving me a lot of points. And what I should do is to just get those points only one time, the first time. So what I'm going to do is like I'm going to give the points, the score. I'm going to increase the score, but then I'm going to destroy the coin. So I'm just going to go back here, and in the same event, I'm going to add an action that is going to say coin destroy. Sorry, coin destroy. So now if I run this, I touch it, increases the score, but then it disappears. So I can only get the coin once. You see, and there, and I get 500 in my score. Quite simple. Now, if we repeat this same thing with the lives, we're going to have something similar, and then we're going to be able also to do something with the enemies, because right now the enemies are just moving there, but they're not affecting me. So I'm going to repeat the process, but instead of like adding something for the score, I'm going to add it for lives. So I'm going to right click, add global variable. In this case, I'm going to call it lives. But instead of starting with 0, I'm going to start with, I don't know, 4 lives. But you can put whatever number you want here, okay? Okay. Now, I need to do something like this. I need to detect the collision between my hero and the enemy. And every single time I'm going to decrease, I'm going to get 1 life from my hero. So that's what I'm going to do. I could copy, paste this one, but I'm going to kind of like do it all. So I'm going to add an event, hero, collision, on collision with another object. In this case, the object would be the enemy. And it's similar to this one, the add to, that is to subtract. So I'm going to add action, system. Instead of add to, I'm going to subtract from. And in this case, because now we have 2 variables, I could subtract from lives or from score, but we're going to leave it at lives, and I'm going to subtract 1 life. Now, if I run it right now, we're going to see kind of like some weird things. Oh, well, I don't think we're going to see much, to be honest. So I'm going to just change it here. The thing is that we haven't really changed anything to show the number of lives. So I'm going to double click here, say text, similar to what we did with the score. I'm going to put it here, and it's going to be called like lives text. I'm going to change it to a red too, and I'm going to say lives equals 4 or something like that. Now, that is kind of like the number that we have here. We have to do something similar to what we did with the score. So instead of like setting the score, I'm going to set the lives text. So I'm going to, you see now we had a score text, now I have lives text. Again, it's going to be set text, and it's kind of like similar to what we had before. So in this case, I'm going to say lives space, and outside the quotation marks, ampersand lives. That is the variable that we created. So I'm going to copy it next to the one that we had before. You're going to see that is almost the same. Instead of score, I'm just putting their lives. So I don't know, 48, something like that. You see? So inside the quotation marks, you put the message that you want to appear, and then outside you put the value of the variable, or you're kind of like telling construct to put the value there. So let's do that now. So right now we have lives 4, and then if I touch one of this, you see that it begins to go down, even to the point that it goes negative. So one of the things that we don't have here is that we're detecting collision, and for example in this case, well, depending on where I sit, it could touch me twice. You see, this time it's touching me only once, but if I move over here, it's kind of like touching me when it's going to the left and then when it's going to the right. So it's decreasing 2 instead of 1. But still, it kind of works, so we can set it up. And the last thing that I'm going to do in this video that it was not really covered in the workshop is to add, well, no, I'm going to leave it for the next video. That's good enough for. So we even cover a little bit more of what we covered during our previous workshop. So I added the lives, but as you could see, it was basically the same thing that we had with the score. So it's not really much of a difference. I'm going to end the video here, and quite likely the next one I will try to add something cooler, like with the enemies. Now we're going to be able to detect the enemies. We're going to be able to figure out when we need a game over, and so far that's what we're going to do.